The pirates. He jumps back and avoids her swings as she rips at the axiom as much as possible, but there's just so little left that she quickly tires. Been neglecting your conditioning? He asks just out of her reach before she dodges to the side to avoid a lazily tossed blast of lightning. No fun on the other side, is it? Knowing that you're helpless in front of someone else. How are you doing this? You're creating axiom. She whispers in horror as she sees the energy burning around him, brighter and stronger than the surrounding terrain. It dissipates quickly, but adds to the local power instead. How? I study, I learn, I experiment, and often fail, but I've learned so much, and even better, I've learned how to learn. He remarks, and she stares at him before all 13 give him vicious smiles. 7 of them start making grasping motions as they suck in breaths deep enough that her gills open up on the sides. The whole mess of a monster rushes forward faster than a creature its size actually can, and he leaps away with a stern look on his face before dodging lightning. You might be able to make more somehow, but you showed me how to take it when you killed the puppy. She hisses at him and dodges a blast of lightning. If you think you can handle it, then take it. Oh, don't think I'll die like little Yvette. I know better than to touch agitated axiom or let it be force-fed to me. Jem remarks from one of her unoccupied mouths as she continues to drink in Franklin's axiom. The fact that it either hasn't occurred to you or that you've dismissed that I've put together a behavioral and capability-based profile on both you and Yvette before coming here says volumes of either your idiocy or arrogance. She pauses for a moment as she churns through just what he said, and realization dawns. So you're saying that you've had this whole thing planned out? That you knew what was going to happen the whole time? I'm no prophet, but everything's been going according to plan. Franklin muses calmly. She hurls a lightning bolt at him. Even now, all is as I've written. All that waits is the last 2 steps. Your own self-made damnation and the final words you hear while alive. No, I am in control. I have the axiom. I have the strength. I am in charge. Jem hollers in a blind fury as she rips the axiom out of him further. He staggers for a moment, but the moment his hand touches the ground, he suddenly has an ocean's worth of power. He vanishes, and she pulls harder before following the ever more visible streams of power. She charges, growing closer and closer until he vanishes again. Over and over, she charges him only for him to vanish as she draws in more and more axiom until she grows frustrated and begins calling lightning from the clear skies. The movement of the power begins refilling the local axiom, but Jem tears away at it, heedless of the growing smirk on Franklin's face as he shifts again and again, forever a hand on the ground and comfortably reclined in a dry patch of the dirt. Not putting it together, are you? Franklin asks as he smirks. Somehow his every teleport makes him stronger, feeding him an enormous amount of axiom even as he shifts. She rips more and more out of him and the surrounding environment. Hey, bud, Doc's set up her own camera to zoom in on this game you're playing, just waiting for the signal. It better be a standard one, otherwise we're going to lose the stream. Yeah, she's done all the hacking. The whole world is seeing this. I know you think it'll be good for morale, but come on, man, this is a little self-indulgent. J3 chides Franklin over the line. Also, we hooked up the signal from your earpiece and mic into the stream. They can hear you loud and clear. You as well, J3, and thank you. This is important. This part of the continent and an entire archipelago of islands are laying fallow for the sake of these 2. We show the world that they're dead in ways that will never be recovered from. And we get a huge breadbasket. Among other uses. Just make sure to give the proper signal, J3 warns him. 10-4, Franklin replies before he vanishes in front of a massive column of lightning that slams into where he once was. Twice more he vanishes, and more lightning comes down each time. The axiom being ripped from him is visible now as streams of smoky light that pours into the mouths of Jem as she instead slowly walks up. I must admit, your strategy confuses me. Big competitions of power and big boasting blasts of energy, but now you're letting me just take all the axiom? Jem asks in bafflement as she looms over him. You really don't understand, do you? This is even worse than Yvette and the Bones, Franklin asks. Dude, I'm confused too. J3 remarks into the line. This isn't adding up. What are you even trying to do? Jem demands as the amount of axiom Franklin is producing grows more and more as the dry patch surrounding him spreads. It's drying. Are you somehow turning the water into axiom? Starting to put it together, keep going. You're letting me take the axiom, somehow making more of it out of the water. She considers as she paces around him. If I don't take it, then you attack again, and a straight-up fight is almost impossible. You're too fast and too vicious to easily kill. Keep going, Franklin urges her with a large grin. Which means you're stalling for time, Jem remarks. And you went down the wrong path entirely. You were getting so close, Franklin states. There is indeed a trap, one you're still barreling towards. I've set up what's called a catch-22. I've set up a situation that by its very definition is unwinnable for you. The axiom is the key, yes, but whether you keep drinking it or refuse to, I will win. Drink it and you walk into my trap, refuse it, and you will find yourself disarmed in front of an immensely angry adept without anything to counter. Either way, you lose. And if I were to reduce you to paste? She demands, bringing down 3 heads to glare at him as her entire being balances upon a single foot and tail as she holds one of her massive claws over his head. So your way out of the trap involves doing something that you've consistently failed to do for a half-hour straight? That's your grand plan? He asks, and the foot comes down. Really, I've got an enormous amount of axiom flowing from me. Of course I'm enhanced enough to resist brute force. Where are you getting it from? She screams at him and he vanishes. She spins to find him upon the next hill. Now that would be telling. Speaking of telling, have you figured out the trap yet? He asks before vanishing in front of a blast of lightning. Jem appears from the discharge of energy thrashing around before 10 of her bodies focus on drinking in as much axiom as possible. If I run to where there's more axiom, you'll chase me. If I attack physically, you counter, you dodge the lighting with ease and learn fast. You want me to have the axiom for some reason. Yes, Franklin says calmly. There's something I can't see or don't know. Something. She muses out loud. He sees it happening and she clearly senses it from the look of sheer horror on her face. That feeling as the thing you've been leaning on so hard just abruptly shifts into something else, and the game utterly changes. He'd scared himself nearly senseless when he discovered this. The axiom brightens within her, grows stronger, then collapses down inwards, becoming so bright it actually inverts and becomes shadow instead. It pulses out from her. It knocks out both flying camera drones, drops her to the ground, and Franklin lets out a groan as a sensation that's a combination of an adrenaline, caffeine, and sugar crash hit him all at once with an axiom crash. "Be gone, thought!" Franklin remarks, and in the distance J3 pulls the trigger on the oversized rifle. The enormous bullet screams through the air, compressing it in front of its pointed nose, the words Malleus Maleficarum etched ever so into its side. It's well named, for this bullet was crafted specifically to strike down the very witch it bears down upon. Jem's communal body erupts into blood and tiny chunks as the ground behind her shatters. The obscenely huge bullet having torn into her from between all of her torsos and reduced everything behind them into so much paste with barely identifiable chunks of individual organs splattering all around even as the enormous crater settles. Franklin slowly stands up with a groan of discomfort before cracking his back. "Okay, what the hell happened?" J3 asks over the comm. "Good shot, man. Thank you, now back on topic. What just happened?" J3 demands. "It's a minor government secret, long story short. Null is understood enough to be manufactured in small quantities. I set her up to produce Null herself, and that shut her down." Jesus, dude. So you can just make it on a whim? Axiom needs to be gathered and then compressed until its wavelength collapses and inverts. She kept pulling in what I was making until there was too much to safely hold. "Then Null," Franklin remarks as he starts walking towards J3. "Not gonna teleport or fly or whatever?" "Local axiom is too scrambled. For about minute or 3, even the most basic stuff is just gonna fail," Franklin remarks as he puts on a fast clip. "Not to mention I was using too much to keep myself in the game. I feel like I've been run over by a steamroller twice." At risk of the cliché, you should see the other guys. One's a bunch of burnt bones, and the other has the chunky salsa rule applied. "You've won," J3 adds. "Excuse me?" Dr. Greywind asks into the comms. "Yes?" Franklin asks. Do note that you're on air. The live streams are still going. J3 adds, Of course I know. I'm the one that hacked into it, she almost snarls. Still, we're grounded with only this radio and the camera really running for a few minutes. But I have to know, is it that easy to make null? Afraid so. It's not well-known information. You have to really dig to get it. But null is very much a natural result of axiom. All the laneways crashing together into cruel space are the reason cruel space is a thing. Franklin answers. Then does that mean we've got a possible superweapon? On the ground, yes, but in space it's a good way to screw yourself very hard as all the systems crash on the ship. Earth tech needs a couple minutes to switch from axiom to not on a spaceship, and that's all you get from a null blast, if the null doesn't make the axiom-dense engines go boom. How close is the average engine from going null? Dr. Greywind asks in a worried tone. It's not. They've got a constant output that bleeds it away even when idle and deactivated. It's why to bring one into null safely you have to pull them apart or boom, Franklin answers. Axiom's almost settled. Yes or no, do we have a possible superweapon? No, containment and dispersal's a big issue. Axiom and null eat at each other, and the winner is churned up like a soda can in a pain shaker. The smallest gap, the slightest leak, and it's gone, and you've got a huge amount of system failures surrounding it. Franklin answers as he slowly walks over. He hasn't so much as glanced at Jem's cooling corpse. By the time he reaches both J3 and Dr. Greywind, the axiom has settled and he gives them both a smile and a thumbs up. I'm good now. Let's get to their little hideouts and rescue those hostages. Poor souls have been through enough already. Oh no, not yet. Sit down. You were practically in the heart of a null detonation, and you humans may be resistant, but it clearly drained you. Doctor, I'm fine. I'll be the judge of that. Sit down and follow the light with your eyes, she says, and Franklin gives J3 a look. The sniper merely smirks at him and gestures for him to go through with it. Fine, Franklin says with a sigh, painfully aware he's being filmed. We really should focus on rescue, though. Rescue's no good if you fall down on us and need to be rescued too, J3 remarks. Why must good reason turn on me? Franklin grumps. The butler did it. At his direction, the music fades somewhat as the band is all smiles, somewhat self-conscious smiles, but smiles nonetheless. Well done, gentlemen. Things are progressing wonderfully, Philip remarks, and the main singer Koa Jackson smiles down at him from his impressive stature. Last time he received a smile that large from a Hawaiian man this broad-shouldered, he was being intimidated by a casino that wanted his winnings returned to them. Thank you, sir. However, I must ask why you had us perform a love song? Koa asks, before glancing to the left and letting out a slight sigh. Philip follows his gaze and sees a pair of Metak women in guard uniforms. Nika and Nita. I wonder which of their secret societies has taken an interest in this event. Who says it's just one, sir? I request that you please don't hurt them. They're too dull to actually be a threat, Koa asks. I've no intention to kill anyone tonight, fret not, Philip says before glancing to the short blue-skinned twins. However, I do feel they're owed a congratulations. They are, after all, carrying possibly the first Hawaiian-descended Metak in the galaxy. Please, sir, Koa remarks and receives a smile. Oh, don't fret. My personal entertainment this evening is harmless. Excuse me, Philip remarks before setting off. A glance to the reflection of a wine glass in a Nagasha's hand has him easily see Admiral Cistern and Ambassador Tal clearly having an excellent time together. He had stayed out of the betting pools due to moral reasons, mostly because his actions would be severely impacting them and had no desire to deal with the drama of a cheating accusation. Perhaps if he were 10 or 15 years younger he would have time for that kind of fun, but he really does need the few more minutes to ensure he's properly rested each day. Good evening, ladies, he says to the two tiny women who look at him in shock before steeling themselves so obviously that it's outright comedic. Wah! Nita half shrieks. Oh my goddess! Nika gasps out. Who are you? Wait, you're one of the Trets doing the strange thing with the ship. The Dauntless, and I am not a Tret young lady. I am human, he remarks, expecting a protest and not at all disappointed in the scoff from Nika, even as she stops Nita from shouting her protest. You know, not very many people are paying too much attention. Mr. Jackson is soon to go on a bit of a break from his singing. If you two were to spend some time with him, I doubt you'd have a great deal of protests or argument, he says, and their eyes widen and he can see them weigh the mission against their affection for Mr. Jackson, and to his private delight, Mr. Jackson wins. In fact, the man wins so hard that neither of them notice him frisking both of them as he kneels down and points to behind the stage where bass and brass is soon to finish their next song. Both incompetent cultists rush off, and Philip heads off to the buffet table to gather a few things for Ambassador Tal. No doubt the renewed dancing is working up a fierce appetite, but the contents of Admiral Cistern's plate will simply not do for her delicate constitution. A sampling of the table and a few drinks to pair with them, and he starts carrying the tray, avoiding the crowds and taking his time as he's flattened out the paper he got off Miss Nika and is reading it out of the corner of his eye. So there's currently a mess of 3 different groups working together. Nika and Nita are to work as distraction in about 10 minutes. However, he doubts they'll be anything but distracted themselves, which means that the plans to take over security will be well and truly stumped. However, there's no reason he has to rely on the competence, or lack thereof, of the aliens. "Good evening again, sir and madam. Perhaps a few touches to restore the lady's strength?" he offers Ambassador Tal as he arrives near the two. "Thank you, Philip. Was that Mr. Jackson's, girlfriends I spotted?" Admiral Cistern asks, clearly hesitating to use the term fuck buddies, a show of good sense from the military man. "It was indeed, sir. There's a touch of mischief afoot. However, I'm on top of it. Do not worry, there will be nothing but a pleasant evening for everyone involved, barring the ones who are attempting to ruin it, of course." "Excellent, Philip. I do look forward to your report at the end of all this," Admiral Cistern remarks as he glances up at the tray that Philip is holding. "Of course, sir," Philip remarks as he places everything down for Ambassador Tal and whisks away the paper into a pocket before he picks up the now depleted plate and mildly depleted bourbon. "Have fun." Admiral Cistern bids him, and Philip favors him with a slight smile. "Excuse me," he says, and begins to walk out smartly. It's best to get rid of the dishes so some poor foolish soul doesn't get herself poisoned by the drink or remaining sauces. He quickly finds his way out of the hall, calling some of the intelligence division to take it from him. He's met by Jonas Oak. The young man is mostly a data analyst, but is willing to do the legwork. A solid young man, he and the team he's part of have been having an almost criminal amount of entertainment pouring through the unending amount of petty conspiracies. "Is there anything else you'd care to have me fetch, sir?" Jonas asks, and Philip smiles. "Get several men down to the office of the registrar. It is about to be raided." Philip orders, leaving things deliberately vague to see if the young man has the initiative and insight to come up with a plan. Perhaps some men looking to taste things more exotic and finding a few friends in the guards. Jonas suggests, and Philip smiles and nods. An excellent plan, but best ensure that he knows the priorities. Probable deniability is the name of the game, Mr. Oak. Just let them know the details of guards and the registrar office. I'll be able to cover the rest from here." Philip says, and receive a smart nod as he passes off the tray to Jonas, who takes it before turning on his heel and marching out. Jonas's plan is even more clever than it appears at first blush. The addictive qualities of pheromones on the women of the galaxy means that the men are effectively able to seduce and maintain the loyalty of an enormous number of women simultaneously. As predicted, the ambassadors and higher-ranked officials and managers are all wed in one way or another, rendering them effectively immune to such a thing. However, the guards, the secretaries, the assistants, valets, janitors, cooks, and effectively every middling to low-ranked individual in the organization are prime targets for seduction and subversion. He re-enters the dance room and calmly takes a veiled communicator from the pocket of a young lady with a very shifty presence. It has several illegal modifications designed to make it work like an extremely low-profile two-way radio. There are several messages upon it, and the contents are very interesting. He pockets it fairly quickly and moves back towards the band. Mr. Jackson is on his break and entertaining the sisters Nika and Nita as he approaches. The new head singer is Mr. Dudley Wrench, a very appropriately named engineer who is also very musically inclined with a deep voice between baritone and bass. "Just a word of warning, Mr. Wrench, and I advise you to explain this to your comrades. There's going to be some unpleasantness rather soon, and you should all quickly utilize your cultural artifacts to deal with them. Look to the balcony." He informs the singer, who nods between sips of water. "Hey, O'Malley, trouble soon, keep prepped and pass it on. Song list is unchanged," Wrench says, leaning back to the saxophonist standing near him. He throws a wink at Philip when he leans back as the news is delivered to the entire band in roughly 3 seconds, including to Koa, whose distraction of Nita and Nika is so thorough that it's not until he pulls away that the women seem to remember where they are. Then he gets right back to it. Philip sees the tiny scandal in progress and nods to himself. It's a mild bit of dirt to distract from the fact that there's a 3-pronged intelligence operation in progress. Give the rumor mongers something to talk about and snicker at while you get to some real work done out of sight. He fetches some of the better tasting treats and begins a quick bit of the rounds to offer them to various guests. He gets a few suspicious looks from several of the men, but all the women to the last seem to simply ignore him. So the pheromone effect is very much in play at this level as well. It's rather fascinating that so many advanced races are so easily controlled by their hormones. He manages to pocket a better-dressed assassin's needle. No doubt it's poisoned with something. There's a cry of assassin as the woman tries to throw some blame at her target. It fails rather quickly, and a pair of guards escort her out in a dead and entirely feigned faint. Alcohol is quickly blamed, and the party resumes. All in all, a rather pitiful attempt, but still the best he's seen all night, as she had an exit strategy. The din dies down, and he gives a pointed look to the band as he spots some waivers and disruptions on the horizon, making a beeline for the balcony. No doubt the next interruption. The winks he receives in return lets him know that everything is all well and fine. Then a ship appears, and numerous armed women begin dropping down from the open door on the side of a troop transport that's in the process of fading into visibility. "Weapons free! Fire at will!" Admiral Cistern barks, and the entire band reveals themselves as armed and dangerous with large drum-fed rifles made of black metal and red wood that fill the air with LED. Mobster style. The 6 women dropping from the ship have bullets slam into them and fall to the ground as a tiny disc is launched through the air, and it soars into the open troop side of the ship. There's a slight pulse, and it collapses to the ground, thankfully crushing no one. "Philip, if you could be so kind as to call some troops here, we need to get this filth cleaned away and the party continued." "What? How could you possibly think of continuing after this?" Lady Takanped demands in shock, with her feathers sticking up and ruffled. Clearly this was her all-or-nothing attempt to derail things. "These cretins are nothing less than the enemy and seek to disrupt this event. As such, I will resist the closing of it to the best of my abilities. Now then, have the balcony doors closed, and we will be able to continue as if nothing has happened," Admiral Cistern states, and after a quick glare to the guards, the doors are closed, even as Philip makes a few quick calls. "Really, Admiral, this is far too much. We have been attacked numerous times. Surely this has gone on long enough." "Madam, the ball has a mere 30 minutes remaining. I ask of yourself and all these good men and women merely half an hour to ensure that all the cruel and callous fools who would ruin our day are foiled. And the sheer amount of weapons that... I know they are cultural artifacts." Lady Takanped begins before ceasing her would-be rant. "Very well. I give up trying to speak sense into a dirt-dwelling ape," she declares with a huff before turning around and marching out of the room. "Out of my way!" she hisses at the guards and storms through. "Very well, then. Does anyone else wish to indulge the dead cretins outside, or shall we continue?" Admiral Cistern asks, taking control of the room. "Very well, then, gentlemen. Music." And just like that, the ball resumes.